Hey squad, GooberTroy here, and we're about to finish up the beginner overview series. In this series, I have provided a very basic overview of each class and spec, highlighting the core rotation abilities and resources to provide a general understanding of how they feel to play. These videos are meant to be an introduction to each class to provide new players with some knowledge to help determine which class might best fit their playstyle. I will be putting out some deep dive videos in the future for classes I decide to play once the game is fully released, which will serve more as in-depth class guides. So if that's something you're interested in, please consider subscribing to the channel so you can be notified once those videos go live. It really helps with my content as a small channel and is greatly appreciated. With that out of the way though, let's take a look at the Summoner. The Summoner has a healing and ranged DPS spec, both of which utilize a summoned pet. The first spec we will be looking at is called Nature's Wrath, which is the ranged DPS role. Like all specs in solo, there are multiple build options for a single spec. In order to keep this video simplified and focused, I will only be looking at the Radiant Skylight build, which is a more caster focused build. For our resources, we have Soul Force, and this is a just pretty simple energy based resource which gets consumed by several of our abilities and regenerates slowly over time. Next is this display here, and this is more for tracking what's called Nuwa runes, and there are up to 3 runes, one of which I haven't unlocked yet in this video because of being underleveled, but these basically just display the current rune status, which is available, active, or on cooldown. For our core abilities, we have Racing Fire, and this is an instant cast spell that deals pretty minor damage and acts as the summoner basic attack. This attack will generate 5 Soul Force and also reduces the cast time of Flame Curse by 0.6 seconds, stacking up to 2 times. And speaking of Flame Curse, this is just a basic Soul Force consumer that deals pretty decent damage. Bright Light is another Soul Force spender attack that's available when using the Radiant Skylight build. This attack deals very strong damage, and if it consumes a Breaker Seal from the target, the damage is further amplified by 60%. Summoning Stone Pylon is the primary summon when we're using the Radiant Skylight build. These summons consume 1 Nuwa rune and will be active for 18 seconds. While active, the pylons attack your target, providing a chance to apply a Breaker Seal. Breaker Seals, when they're consumed with either Flame Curse or Bright Light, pop to deal additional damage. Lastly, Excess Light is a buff that you will acquire when you're using the Radiant Skylight stance, and hitting a target 15 times with either Racing Fire or Flame Curse grants you this buff. What this buff does is grants you a free Bright Light cast regardless of the current cooldown status of your actual Bright Light spell. For this demonstration, I'm going to be focusing more on the early game spell priority rather than an actual rotation. When trying to deal burst damage, you will want to use all of your Nuwa runes to summon Stone Pylons. This gives us an increased chance to generate Breaker Seals since you have multiple Stone Pylons attacking instead of just a 1. From here, we want to try to use Bright Light whenever we have a Breaker Seal applied, because that's just going to apply the 60% damage buff to Bright Light. In the meantime, we will continue to fill by casting 2 Racing Fires into an instant cast Flame Curse to generate excess light stacks. If the goal is to deal sustained DPS, then the only change to this priority system would be to use 1 Stone Pylon at a time in order to increase our overall Breaker Seal generation, instead of just trying to pile all the Stone Pylons into one burst window. Moving on to the next spec, we have Nuwa's Blessing, and this is the Summoner's Healing role. This spec's primary goal is to provide heal over time effects to help smooth damage during encounters while providing support with your summoned pet. For resources, we have MP, which acts as the primary resource for the Nuwa's Blessing, and this resource regenerates slowly over time and gets used by a lot of your spells. Getting into the core abilities, first we have Healing Light, and this is a cheap instant cast single target heal that will apply a heal over time effect. This heal over time effect, however, can only be active on 1 player at any given time. Next we have Healing Mist, and this is another instant cast heal over time effect that you apply to a single target. This spell has 4 charges which recharge pretty quickly. Moving along, we have Heavy Mist, and this is a free instant cast area of effect heal that basically any players around you that have Healing Mist applied will have that heal over time effect consumed to heal for 70% of the remaining heal effect. For our next spell, I'm just calling it Command Summon because my understanding is this spell name will change depending on the build you're using. But from a baseline perspective, you command your pet to follow a target around and it will heal them over time, so probably a good thing to place on your tank. Getting into the cooldowns available to Nuwa's Blessing, first is Soothing Daylight. And this cooldown is basically where you place a circle on the ground and players who stand within it heal for a little bit over time. They also have damage taken reduced by 5%, and also a shield will be applied, so it's kind of like double dipping in heals and shields, so pretty solid. For the last cooldown, we have Blazing Sun, and I'm just trying to interpret the tooltip here, so I apologize if my understanding is incorrect, but when you start channeling Blazing Sun, 10 members of your party are selected for a buff application called Blazing Sun, and this buff will heal everyone by a pretty decent amount every 1.5 seconds. Continuously channeling this ability will extend the duration of Blazing Sun, and at the end of the channel, a burst heal will be applied. Due to how Healing Light works, this makes Nuwa's Blessing a strong single target healer. Here's an example of how you can use the tools available in your base kit though. For someone who's expecting to take a lot of damage, such as the tank, you want to have your pet active on them. Because Healing Light can only be active on a single person, this will likely be switched to different targets throughout the fight, but only 3 stacks active on players taking a lot of damage to conserve some mana. Healing Mist has a short cooldown and is a pretty strong heal over time effect, and therefore that makes it a pretty strong option for spot healing. If you're expecting a bit of raid-wide damage in a moment, you can spread several Healing Mists proactively and use Heavy Mist to do a bit of a burst AoE heal. Heavy Mist can also be used as a bit of an oh crap button in single target situations, but remember you have to have Healing Mist already applied, so this is more for if you don't have time to apply Healing Light to those targets in particular. Lastly, for cooldowns, both Soothing Daylight and Blazing Sun serve as AoE healing cooldowns that you'll want to use reactively, so use them immediately as big raid damage is coming out. And that concludes the summoner overview. I know I mostly covered a more caster-based build, but trust me when I say that there are still a lot of summons you can utilize for your damage. I've heard that Summoner deals some pretty insane damage, and I can't wait to see them in action. For the healing role, I like this type of playstyle where you have to apply and maintain heal over time effects. It makes a spec feel more active and busy, which I appreciate. As for the summons on both specs, I haven't noticed any weird, buggy AI, but I wouldn't be surprised if we encounter something weird along the way. It seems like any class that uses pets in any MMO always has some sort of wonky AI, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. What do you guys think of the Summoner though? Is this the type of class that you're going to go for? But I'm GooberTroy from Squad Up Games, reminding everyone to squad up and have fun.